What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Happy Friday, 7 days away from Notre Dame versus Indiana in the college football playoff. Look, I'll be completely honest with you guys. 9 days removed from National Signing Day, not really much going on. Well, we'll kind of talk about the transfer portal, I'm sure, but it's quiet on that front for the Fighting Irish and not really a whole lot to write home about right now for the 2026 class. Again, with everything kind of focused on the college football playoffs. So we have a lot to talk about, but this is called the Notre Dame recruiting update. Not many updates, but you're going to get a lot of thoughts from myself and Kyle Kelly. And Kyle, I trust that you're doing well, my friend.
Think so. Yeah, 1 week from today, it'll be the big day, and I'm looking forward to it. Counting down the days, counting down the hours, and a lot to be excited about with Notre Dame football right now.
Yeah, we posted at blueandgold.com today our projections and like predictions for round by round, like filling out a bracket for March Madness. We did that at Blue and Gold today. And if you want the cheat sheet for how things are going to end up, including a big upset, you'll be able to find that at blueandgold.com. And for my show next Tuesday with Tim Hyde, Tim and I will show you guys our brackets. Do you call it a bracket? I don't know. And then Kyle, for our show next week before the big game, we'll do it with you as well. I don't even know if we'll call it the recruiting update show. We might just do a whole on preview show, just me and you, just talking about some various things. But did want to start by letting people know to hit the thumbs up on this video. Of course, subscribe to the channel for more content and head over to blueandgold.com. It's a great time to sign up. We always have some promotion going on. I still think you could sign up for $1 for a week or something to try us out at blueandgold.com. So if you're like, Mike, what does that mean? It's a website where you get tons of reporting and analysis and recruiting updates, intel galore, and then you get the Loose Emoji message board with thousands of Notre Dame fans talking Fighting Irish football and recruiting and Cubs baseball and whatever the hell else is going on. So check it out, blueandgold.com. Kyle, you wrote a really good story this week, or a couple of stories comparing the starters between Indiana and Notre Dame. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. This was a premium article, so this is something that you have to subscribe to the site to read. But hey, for folks watching the YouTube show and listen to the podcast version of this, you guys are going to get to see this for free. So when you compare the rating, right, you have Notre Dame's quarterbacks have an 87.6 rating. Now, this is is this the industry ranking, Kyle?
Yes.
So Notre Dame, so if you're like, all right, what does that mean? It's kind of an arbitrary number. Like an 87.6, I believe, is a 3-star. And I think once you get to 89, it becomes a 4-star. So 87.6 is kind of right, Kyle? That seems low for Notre Dame. 87?
This is for the starters, so I could have really gone nuts and done the whole scholarship chart.
Oh,
that would have, that would have taken me a significant amount of time and not been as relevant. So I went with the recruiting ratings of just the starters.
Got it. Okay, so if we look at like Riley Leonard's on 3 profile here, yeah, he has an 87.6. So okay, I see what you did there. Okay.
Yes.
So Notre Dame has the edge in quarterback by a good margin, running back by nearly 15 points, Notre Dame being at a 94.88. Now, does the running back just include, okay, so it's just the one starter. So it's just Love versus Justice Ellison. What about the wide receiver average? IU has a 55, Kyle. Notre Dame's an 89 to IU's 55. Kyle?
Yeah. No. So part of the reason why these numbers are so low, and we can talk about this a little bit further, but just to kind of lay the groundwork, is that much of Indiana's team, at least their starters, are comprised of transfer portal players, and most of the guys they acquired out of the transfer portal are from James Madison. And since most of those guys were also upperclassmen at James Madison, they were playing for an FCS team before James Madison became an
What?
FBS in 2022. So a lot of those FCS guys are either lowly rated or have no recruiting ranking whatsoever. So not the most highly touted high school prospects on Indiana's roster, at least for the starters on both offense and defense.
Folks, just want to point the obvious out. I'm not in my normal setup, and I'm running on Wi-Fi rather than connected directly, through Ethernet hardwire. And this Wi-Fi that I'm at right now is not the greatest. So I apologize if I buffer. Just kind of bear with us today. This just kind of goes to show, like, the recruiting rankings aren't the be-all, end-all. Look, I know Indiana. I've been dogging on Indiana's resume a little bit, but it has to be pointed out that if it were so easy, then why didn't more teams just go 11-1 and beat all of those easy? Because you do have, like, Miami, for example. Miami has a more talented football team than Indiana. I mean, just in terms of sheer athletes and talent. Why isn't Miami in the college football playoff? Why isn't Alabama in the college football playoff? Because it's not as easy as just, we have better players, we're going to win. Like Alabama has better football players than Vanderbilt, but sometimes you get upset. Like, these things happen. In Indiana, they just have a good core, a good nucleus. Underrated guys coming out of high school, that's for sure. But like Elijah Surratt is like their best. Like, he's a fantastic player. No recruiting ranking. 0. Nothing. It's wild. It's wild. So we'll just kind of scroll on, Kyle. Wrapping up, tight end is more of the same, right? Mitchell Evans was a 4-star. Horton was in the 2000s. More of the same, right? Anthony Knapp, you got a freshman All-American. Carter Smith, a 3-star, right? Tyler Stevens in the 2000s. Billy Strouth was a blue chip. Center, right guard, okay. Top 100 overall player at right tackle in Trey Wedig, who was the number 93 overall player in the country. What a strong get for Wisconsin. Yeah, okay. So this was a grad transfer. So they got a grad transfer at right tackle. But still, there's not a single position where Indiana has the higher ranked player than Notre Dame. So, Kyle, just on the offensive side of the ball before we go to defense, like, what were your takeaways? Because you wrote the article, right? Like, I'm just kind of talking about what you wrote, but you wrote it. You did all the research there. What was your takeaway in writing that story before we move over to defense?
Yeah, no, there's just a couple, and kind of the reason I did this exercise, and this was something I did before the Texas A&M game as well, and it kind of influenced my opinion of what the outcome of that Notre Dame versus Texas A&M game was going to be, because Texas A&M had a lot of more highly rated, highly touted recruits on their team. They had a higher pedigree, and by the recruiting rankings, more talent. But obviously Notre Dame beat them. That's why you play the game on the field. But I think the reason that, I'll call it again, once again, an exercise is so important, because the foundation of each college football team is going to be the way you recruit. And I think when you look at, Indiana's record this year, yes, they are 11-1, but a lot of their wins have come against the lesser teams in the Big Ten that aren't recruiting at a higher clip. Now, when they matched up against Ohio State, completely different ballgame. Ohio State's been a top 5 team in the recruiting rankings the last handful of years, pretty much every year. I think every year under Ryan Day. And look what Ohio State did to Indiana in that ballgame. Now you can also
shot themselves in the foot.
Yes. Obviously with the turnovers and the special teams woes, and you can also flip the conversation this way by talking about how Indiana beat Michigan, pretty convincingly, but also, Michigan, even though They made the college football playoff 3 years in a row. They won
5
a
points. They beat
championship.
them 20-15, Kyle.
Well, I'm
Dang.
not as influenced in the score, but basically my point being that Michigan really hasn't recruited at a high clip. So basically that's the reason why I did this exercise, is just because I think it's a good way to look at some of the talent on the teams, who is outperforming their recruiting ranking, and how Notre Dame and Indiana stack up with one another in that capacity. And just running through a couple of my offensive takeaways, like their team is pretty much guided by two Ohio University transfers, their quarterback Curtis Work being the most notable one, and then one of their wide receivers, Miles Cross, came over from Ohio with Rourke. Those are two of their top players on offense, but a lot of these guys came over from James Madison. The one most notable former Duke would be Elijah Surratt, who
Mhm.
did not have a recruiting ranking, and he actually began his college career at St. Francis University, which is another FCS school in Pennsylvania. He was an FCS All-American. But this goes back to your point, Mike, that sometimes recruiting rankings aren't the end all be all, because Surratt finished as FCS All-American. Now he's in the Big Ten and one of the top Big Ten wide receivers in that conference. So one other takeaway that I found pretty interesting is just that Indiana's starting right tackle Trey Wydig, from the Badger State, was recruited by Notre Dame offensive line coach Joe Rudolph to Wisconsin. Then he transferred over to Indiana,
Right.
I think this year or the year before. So anyway, if they're, when you look at the recruiting pedigree with a lot of these positions, Notre Dame has the offensive advantage, pretty convincingly. But if there's a position on the Indiana offense where I think they, might be stronger than others when you look at the recruiting ranking, would be on the offensive line. They have a lot of talent that was reflected in their performance this season. I think had an all-conference selection or two. So I'll be interested to see how that Indiana offensive line matches up against a pretty talented Notre Dame defensive line that is kind of regarded as one of the top units in the country.
Kyle, can you see my screen? Or is my screen
Sure
share
can.
working? Okay.
Yeah,
I just had a
absolutely.
new alert pop up that I've never seen before. But folks, let's talk about PrizePicks, because our friends over there are sponsoring this week's Notre Dame recruiting update. And I do have to tell you that testing my skills on PrizePicks during football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Quick withdrawals, easy game plan, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. If you have the skills, you can take $10 and turn it into 1,000 with just a few taps. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. It's as simple as that. It makes watching sports games a lot more fun. And if you're into like Counter-Strike Go or Valorant, they have like some of those tactical shooters, like they have, you can watch streams and play daily fantasy. It truly is wild, just the amount of stat types or different sports, I should say, that you can play. Again, NBA, NHL, NFL, college football, college basketball, soccer, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, tennis, MMA, cricket. Yeah, folks, why don't you hop in some cricket daily fantasy? There you go. They have some neat weekly promotions as well that can lead to big payouts. Taco Tuesday, Flex Friday. You can learn more about that at PrizePicks, and they're always tweeting about it as well. So PrizePicks. Make sure. Oh man, what is our promo code? Is it just BGI? Is it? I have it. I can pop it up on the screen right now. Download the PrizePicks app or head to PrizePicks.com. Use the code BGI to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineup. So PrizePicks is a lot of fun. It'll be good to play during college football playoffs. As we get into NFL playoffs, it's a lot of fun. Just a way to enhance your viewing experience, at least in my opinion. So use the code BGI to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. Let's move over to defense, Kyle. I'm guessing it's more of the same when you take a look at how these guys stacked up as recruits. So the D-line average, holy crap, 91 to IU's 42. The linebacker, IU doesn't have a single starter. This is just starters, guys. Doesn't have a single starting linebacker that was graded as a recruit. And then the secondary, Notre Dame 90, IU 85. So, like, wow, Kyle, what were your thoughts about looking through this? Just guys who just didn't get really ranked as recruits coming out of high school.
Well, part of the reason why a lot of these guys weren't graded is because they weren't really highly recruited. Like going back to what I touched on in our first segment, so to speak. I mean, it's the same segment, but on the offensive stanza of our segment, a lot of these guys come from the FCS. And, when you look, part of what I did when, writing this story is I looked back at how some of the recruitments played out. And a lot of these guys are picking James Madison over an FCS school or some of the service academies. And, like, for example, they have a starter on their team that I think signed with Navy over like nobody. And he didn't even play at Navy. He played at, he spent his freshman year at the Naval Prep Academy, which is where some of the underclassmen spend their first or second year out at Navy. So, but once again, a lot of these guys really outperforming the recruiting rankings. And, some of my research, I ended up finding out that there's two players on this team that were former James Madison guys that became all Big Ten, first team Big Ten this year. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, kind of casually learning about Indiana, there are two players that you need to know. And the first one is defensive end Mikhail Kamara. He comes from James Madison. He's one of the top defensive linemen in the entire country. Is, I think, top 15 in tackles for loss and sacks. He signed with James Madison out of high school over Kent State and a bunch of FCS programs. It's crazy because last year he was just second team All Sun Belt Conference, but then he develops into a first team All Big Ten player this year. And then another guy that James Madison, you want to talk about like finding diamonds in the rough. We use that term a lot in recruiting. One guy that they signed coming out of high school from Chaminade, been down at prep. And I know Mike down in Florida is pretty much, regarded as one of the top high school football programs down there. Mm-hmm. That's where Jeremiah Smith came from, the, highly touted Ohio State freshman wide receiver. Well, they also had a highly touted, defensive back down there who goes by the name of D'Angelo Pons. He signed with James Madison in the 23 cycle over 23 cycle over Akron, FAU, FIU, Liberty. Did have a Power 5 offer from Syracuse, but he is, in a quick amount of time, become one of the top cornerbacks in all college football. I mean, look at his high school ranking. Was a number 1,560 overall player in the class, 141 cornerback, and the number 219 player in Florida. So complete diamond in the rough. He goes to James Madison, and as a freshman is freshman All-American, who's also a semifinalist for the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year award. He enters the transfer portal. I guarantee you he had a bunch of schools from Florida, a bunch of schools from the South all after him. He was one of the most highly regarded cornerbacks in the entire portal last year. He follows Curt Cignetti to Indiana and becomes probably the best cornerback in the Big Ten this year, just as a true sophomore coming from James Madison. So there's a lot of those stories on this Indiana roster. And I think just kind of wrapping up the conversation this way, even though that, the Hoosiers don't have as many highly rated recruits compared to Notre Dame, a lot of these guys have become, all Big Ten type players and some of the top overall players in all college football. And I think that really speaks to the coaching job of Curt Cignetti and that entire coaching staff, and to develop these guys and to big time contributors. How that impacts things come next Friday, I am going to be really curious to find out.
Let's move on to talking about some Notre Dame commits and signees signees in the 25 class, commits in the 26 class, who are just kind of wrapping up senior seasons and junior seasons in the past week or still active. Want to kind of give you guys a rundown on that. Anthony Sacca and his Philadelphia St. Joseph Preps team, 35-6 triumph against Pittsburgh Central Catholic. Fun side note, my uncle played for Central Catholic and played against Dan Marino. That's all I got. I don't know what happened in the game, but that was one of my claim to fame when I was a kid, that my uncle played against Dan Marino as a huge Dolphins fan. Sadly, I became a Dolphins fan after Marino retired because I was 7 years old. Been a tough stretch. But anyways, 7 tackles, couple for loss, and a sack. Anthony Sacca, that was in the state title game. Strong season for him, 76 tackles, 18 for loss, 5.5 sacks, 10 PBUs, and a 94-yard interception return. For a touchdown for Sacca, Noah Grubbs, man, I went and saw Grubbs twice this fall. One was in a preseason classic game where he threw 3 touchdowns and threw a couple picks. Wasn't his best game. And then one of Lake Mary's 2 losses I was at. So I think I'm banned from seeing Grubbs play because they've done really well in every other game this season. 12-2 for Notre Dame's class of 2026 signal caller pledge. And the team that they lost to that I went and saw was against Dr. Phillips, and they won 42-3. So, yeah. State title game tomorrow, and this is big time. I think, is there 8 classifications in Florida? I don't know. It's changed over the years, but class 7, 8.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
so is this the semifinals, Kyle? I thought it was the finals, no? Yeah, this is the finals. This is a typo.
Yep, sorry. This commit tracker is unfortunately bound to 1 or 2 typos every week because, Mike, I know when you did it back in the day.
Back in the day, it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, it's a lot of just minute, tedious details, and it's very easy to copy and paste and forget to take the semi out of that word. So yeah, state championship game tomorrow afternoon. I'm most likely going to be watching it and providing updates. I'll write an article on it. That's at least my plan. So excited to see. Noah Grubbs has had a really strong season, 14 games, 2,700 yards, 34 touchdowns, 10 picks, and then has 5 rushing touchdowns as well. So Noah Grubbs is, knock on wood, if Noah Grubbs stays healthy, Kyle, he's going to go down as one of the most productive, when you play as many games as Grubbs has, and because he's making deep playoff runs every year, right? He's been starting since he was a freshman. I think maybe he played in half the season as a freshman. And then you're going to have a senior season. If you can stay healthy, again, that's where I'm knocking on wood, and you put up some pretty good numbers, like Grubbs is going to go down as one of the most highly productive quarterbacks in the Sunshine State's history. He's balling. I mean, he set so many records as a sophomore at his school. He's just going to blow past all of them.
Can we talk about that for a sec? That's a big deal because Florida is, when you look at the states across the in the U.S. that are best known for producing high school football talent. Who do you talk about, Mike? Florida, Georgia, Texas, California,
Ohio.
Yeah, but not to the same degree. It's
not to the same degree, but they're the next group. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, when we talk about producing elite high school football talent, you think about all those quarterbacks through the years that have come out of Florida, and Noah Grubbs is potentially going to finish as one of the best in history coming out of Sunshine State. That's a really big deal for Notre Dame.
From a stat standpoint, his last year he was 208 for 354. Completed 208 passes for 354 on 354 attempts, 3,600 passing yards, 49 touchdowns. So I think he doesn't have quite the same weapons as he did last year. But still, I mean, you're going 34 touchdowns this year, 49 the year before. Say he gets 40 next year. I mean, you're blowing past 100 career touchdowns. It is pretty impressive. Moving on the list, Thomas Davis Jr., Notre Dame's 2026 commit from Matthews Weddington, undefeated this season. So they're in a state semifinals, I'm guessing Friday, Kyle?
Yeah.
Today?
Yep. North Carolina is still in the semifinal, which is crazy to think that, in some states, high school football's been wrapped up for about a month, and North Carolina is only in the semifinal.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's funny. Like Indiana starts so early, and then you get up in the Northeast. Some will start in mid-September. It's like, what are we doing here? I think Indiana does it right. Just my personal opinion. That is my favorite. Indiana getting started so early, and then especially if you're cold weather, man. North Carolina is not that bad, but talking about the Northeast, bro. I don't know. I guess their seasons are also 9 or 10 games, but still. And then Kyle, anyone else who just recently won state championships to talk about, or any other? I mean, Elijah Burris and Nolan James winning the non-public B group state championship. That's a pretty big deal. Both of those guys had tremendous senior seasons, but anyone else I'm not talking about here that, okay, James Flanagan's team, state champions. Anyone else we should discuss?
I think it's important to note the performances that some of these guys have had in their state championship games. Been pretty remarkable. And I'll start with Nolan James first here. I do have to pull it up from the past commit tracker. If I can do that. So Nolan James in the state championship, listen to this. He had 29 carries for a season high. I also think this was a career high, 244 yards and 2 touchdowns in the state championship game. I mean, that's an unbelievable outlet. That just speaks to the type of performance that he's had all season long, and pretty much why Notre Dame, in my opinion, I think has recruited him, because when they're popping on those Elijah Burris tapes to kind of follow him throughout his senior year, you look at the running back on Wayne, New Jersey, DePaul Catholic's roster. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. I think 4-star prospect.
1,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, 12 games. It's huge Nolan James fan over here. Kyle, you know what else I'm a fan of?
What's that?
If you want to look good, folks, maybe you don't look good. Maybe you're like Kyle Kelly. You're just not a naturally handsome. I'm just kidding. But if you want to boost your wardrobe, Rhoback. I mean, listen, folks, there's some ad reads I just get giddy talking about, and Rhoback is one of them because their stuff is seriously tremendous. I'm wearing Rhoback every other day, and I only have which pieces do I fear? I have the Notre Dame Stadium one, the Fighting Irish one, and then the gray hoodie. That gray hoodie's not on here. I wonder if it's sold out or what the case is, but I have that one as well, and I'm wearing this stuff every other day because Rhoback just looks good. And when you talk about Rhoback, it's best fit, best feel. If you're not familiar with the Rhoback, completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Their game day collection is awesome that you see on the screen, and with their polo designs, hoodie, Q-zip designs for your Notre Dame Fighting Irish. It's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. That Rhoback everyday shorts, perfect pairing, very comfortable, elastic waistband, and great fabric that is meant to have the appearance of a nice short, but the comfort of an athletic short. Rhoback's also been very active in the NIL space, having signed past Notre Dame stars like Audric Estime, Kyle Hamilton, and Michael Mayer, and then current athletes Riley Leonard and Ben Morrison. It's the go-to brand for college athletes. Use the code BLUEGOLD20 on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers. From what I've seen from Rhoback, this isn't part of the ad read, but I haven't seen like above 20% off. So if you're like, oh, I want to wait around for a better offer, even Black Friday was 20% off. So but for our listeners and YouTube viewers, Blue Gold 20, that you're getting 20% off anytime you want. Don't know if that's going to stay around forever. So there is a little bit of a sense of urgency. But for as much as I know, this is going to be around for a little bit. So take advantage of Blue Gold 20 for a generous 20% off for all new customers. RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more when you use that promo code Blue Gold 20. Moving along, Mr. Kelly. We talked about this. Were you going to write your own superlatives article about the Notre Dame 25 class? Is it kind of
that was the
by?
intention, and then Notre Dame made the college football playoff on Sunday, and it's kind of been like been a weird week, dabbling in some team coverage. So it's something I still have an interest in doing, but I don't know if it's still of interest to the readers. So let us know, folks, in the chat or on the Loose Emoji message board. If you want to hear my superlatives of the 25 recruiting class, I'd be more than happy to give them.
I mean, I'm just scrolling down in the chat. I mean, Notre Dame football on Blue and Gold said I would like it. So I feel like you okay. So I do this every year, like a superlatives article. I've been this same format for years. And one of my favorite parts about it is that you can see the past people that I picked. The class MVP for this year, so it's kind of like take into account like several different things, right? It's like you have to be talented, but you also have to like be a leader, commit early. And for me, there was not a single person that like stood out as an obvious candidate. The quarterback is usually one you look at right away, but Blake Hebert committed less than 2 months before signing day. So I was going to pick him. Will Black, I considered. Chris Burgess, I considered. But I went with Dallas Golden, someone who among recruits is just kind of has an aura to him, talented as they come. I think he's got 5-star talent. So I went with Dallas Golden and also really considered Chris Burgess. He was my runner-up. Just because Chris Burgess, the combination of Chicago kid, super talented, and visited Notre Dame nonstop, like showed up at like when Jadon Blair got in town for his official visit over the summer, like Burgess greeted him. Like I really consider Burgess. Here are my previous picks. Chris Tyree in the 2020 class. That was my first class covering the Fighting Irish. Blake Fisher in 2021. Snead in 2022. Bowen 2023. And CJ Carr 2024. I think these were all great picks. Now, granted, like Ben Morrison's truly the MVP of the 22 class, but going back to like looking back at these, I loved all of these picks. We're going to go a few at a time, Kyle, and then you can like give quick thoughts. We don't have really time to dive into them too much. Best athlete for this, I'm a sucker for picking offensive linemen. And I did that back in 2020. Michael Carmody was a really good athletic offensive lineman. Didn't quite work out at Notre Dame, but Will Black runs a 4.9 in the 40-yard dash and stands at 6'7", 292 pounds. Really doesn't get much more athletic than that. Runner-up, Mark Zachary, for being a state champion on the hardwood and the gridiron. He's a damn good athlete. And by the way, folks, I don't do multiple winners. So if you win MVP for Dallas Golden, you're not going to win anything else. That's kind of how I do it. Michael Carmody, Tyler Buckner was the pick in 2021. Eli Raridan, heck of an athlete in basketball as well. Brandon Hillman signed with Notre Dame, of course, and ended up at Notre Dame. He was a tremendous athlete. And then Tay Johnson last year. I loved that pick. Most underrated. So I went with Dom Hulak here. He's a 4-star and inside the top 300, but just talking to Notre Dame sources, they just absolutely love Dom Hulak. And it is more about and I wrote this in the article, it's about how the player's being looked at and valued. I just don't think he gets the love. He's not talked about enough. He's not ranked. I mean, again, On3 has him ranked highly, but 24/7 ESPN rivals don't have him in their national rankings. Ko'o Kia, I really struggled between Hulak and Ko'o Kia because Kia's the 3-star across the board. But Hulock at 6'4", 240 runs a 4.6 verified 40-yard dash. Previous picks, Aiden Kayana, didn't work out. Ryan Barnes, didn't work out. Jaden Bellamy, didn't work out. But my last two picks, I think, were really good. Adon Schuler and Anthony Knapp for most underrated. So class MVP, best athlete, most underrated. Kyle, real quick, what do you think about my picks?
Well, Jaden Bellamy is actually having a pretty good year for Syracuse. I think Notre Dame might see him next year. I can't remember, but he started pretty much all their games. So even though he didn't work out for Notre Dame, he has worked out for Syracuse. So I'll give you a little nod there. But I like the pick of Will Black for best athlete. I don't love it. Did you use James Flanagan elsewhere in that story? Okay,
Yeah.
you did. So I'm going to pretend that the reason you did not use James Flanagan
So
for
Flanagan's a big hockey player, right? He's
well,
big
it's
time.
not even that. It's more so his track and field background. Like he's one of the best field and like throwing athletes in all the nation. So I remember that when Charles Power did his high school freaks list over the summer, I think Flanagan was top 10. I know Will Black, I think, was mentioned as well, but I think Power actually had Flanagan a little bit higher than Black. So that's maybe why I would have leaned Flanagan over Black, but I can completely see where you're coming from with putting Black.
Jay Carr in the chat said Jadon Blair's my pick. I'm assuming for MVP. He's also someone I considered, but I typically like to go for an early commit, and Blair was in July. Golden was at the end of April. I think it was. I mean, that's just it's a couple months, but that's a huge difference in the recruiting calendar, spring versus after OVs in the summer. But yeah, Jadon Blair, 100%. An excellent leader for Notre Dame in the class and a big-time talent. There's not one, Kyle, superlative that I feel like more confident about. It's my boom or bust one. I think this player is going to be a stud or flop. And it's obviously Antavius Richardson. And it's not a knock on him. He is a freaky athlete at 6'2", 170 pounds, but he's never played receiver. Like, how many routes has he even run in his life? So if he figures it out, Antavius Richardson, it's going to be a freak. If not, he's going to switch positions. Now, this is more of a boom or bust for him at receiver. He could switch positions and go to DB and be really good, or, play running back, or I don't know what. Like, he really could play any position that he puts his mind to, but he does move positions. Like, who knows at that point. Previous picks. Ooh, okay. Caleb Offord, 2020, bust. Jason Anye, 2021. To be determined, I guess. Aiden Gobira, portal. Braylon James, portal. Styles Prescott, too early to call on that one. Most versatile, I went with Jadon Blair. As they're in the article, a quick Google search says the following is the definition of versatile: able to adapt or be adapted to many different functions or activities. And with Blair's size, 6'4.5", 195 pounds, how he's able to, come down in the box, make stops, fill the alley, play receiver at a pretty high level, make some Kyle Hamilton-esque plays in the back end. Like, I really like this pick of Jadon Blair. Runner-up was Ko'o Kia, because I think Kia is an outstanding box player that can do a lot, play all the linebacker spots, and I think he could play Viper as well. Previous picks here, Xavier Watts played multiple positions at Notre Dame. I think that's a good call. Kari G in the 2021 class, that didn't quite work out. Neither did Nolan Ziegler in 2022. Preston Zinter, loved him on both sides of the ball in the 23 class, and then I went with Cam Williams last year. Instant impact is where I went with James Flanagan, Mr. Kelly. I wrote, this one might surprise you, but Flanagan is in store for a freshman season where he's playing a good bit. Notre Dame could still go to the portal for a tight end. It's possible, but regardless, I think Flanagan is going to play as a true freshman. You lose Mitch Evans. And after Mitch, Cooper Flanagan, you feel good about. Eli Raridan, you feel good about. But there's really not like a no-brainer, like here's the next Mitch Evans or Michael Mayer or Cole Kmet. Like, I think that Flanagan could come in And even if it's playing a role like Cooper Flanagan did in 2023, where he's like that number 3 tight end, you still saw him a lot. I think that could be James Flanagan. No relation, by the way. Love James Flanagan. Previous picks here, Isaiah Pryor for the 2021. Now, this was very obvious. He was the transfer portal guy, but that was still very early on in the whole transfer thing. So I put him. Lorenzo Styles, 2021. You got to say that hit, although didn't quite work out for him at Notre Dame. Tobias Merriweather, 2022. He did have an impact in that Stanford game. 2023, Jane Greathouse, love that pick. Kingston Viliamuasa, 2024, love that pick. So instant impact, versatile, and boomer bust. Kyle, what do you think about these 3 picks?
Just touching on Flanagan, the reason he's going to play right away, and I feel the same way, is because he's an exceptional blocker.
Yeah.
And that right away, that's going to get you on the field at Notre Dame. I mean, even though the Mike Denbrock offense is transitioning a little bit to have the tight ends play different roles. I mean, you see those guys blocking quite a bit this year. And I think Flanagan has a chance. I mean, I know he's only a high school guy. He's only playing Division III, Wisconsin, which is not the greatest talent. But I have a feeling when he gets to Notre Dame, he could quickly become one of their top blockers at tight end just because of his athleticism, his physicality. I mean, those are 2 things that really help you in that department. So I would not be surprised to see him make a big-time impact next year. That's exactly who I would have gone with as well. So I'm a little bit more kind, I guess, with your athlete pick, knowing that, I probably would have preferred Flanagan at that spot.
Folks, please hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content. The chat's debating O-line stuff. Notre Dame has a great problem on its hands for – like what do you do with Knapp, who, freshman All-American, like Goolsby doesn't think he's going to start next year. Like, it's a fascinating thing. We'll have many months to discuss that. But right now we're going to discuss Augie's Locker Room, one of my favorite sponsors that we've ever had at Blue and Gold. And folks, I know that you love unique, one-of-a-kind Notre Dame items, and you can find it at one place. It's Augie's Locker Room. Like this level of uniqueness, like there's nothing else that matches Augie's, which does have a new location as of last fall, 1733 North Ironwood Drive, just down the street from Notre Dame. So whether you're in town for the playoff game, you're driving through South Bend, you're local, whatever the case may be, head over to Augie's Locker Room to check out their Notre Dame Stadium pieces, jerseys, helmets, autographs, one-of-a-kind Rockney items, exclusive Joe Montana signed items, and famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues around the stadium. Auggie gets new stuff in all the time. If he doesn't have something in store, he's going to go find it for you, right? Everyone needs a guy, right? Or a girl, but you just need that person who just gets things done for you. And so you can just say, hey, I know that you are the person for this. When it comes to Notre Dame memorabilia, it is Augie's. This is the person to call. He's got the online store. So if you can't get to South Bend, you can give him a call, 574-277-6363, or go to augieslockerroom.com and check out the online store. And if anyone wants to buy me a little signed mini helmet for my setup back home, I will love you forever and ever. So there you go. All right, augieslockerroom.com. We'll continue on in the article, Mr. Kelly. Who do we got next? Hidden Gem, Brandon Logan. I think this one is a really good pick. 4-star by On3 now, but, you flipped a Vanderbilt baseball commit who only had an offer from Iowa in football. Like this was, I guess Vanderbilt ended up making a 2-sport offer for him as well. But great evaluation by Notre Dame. Got to see him a little bit at Irish Invasion, was fantastic. And as I wrote in this article, like part of the reason why Notre Dame didn't try to flip Ivan Taylor hard in later in the segment, they really didn't try at all, is because, look, they already had 3 safeties committed, Brandon Logan, Jadon Blair, and Ethan Long, and they love Brandon Logan. Like they're like, man, like there's similar-ish players, stature and position. So it was like, man, we love Brandon Logan. We would have got to take a 4th safety. Like they were good with their group. So Brandon Logan, the previous picks, hidden gems. Alexander Ahrensberger didn't work out. JoJo Johnson, I think he ended up at a junior college. Ashton Craig.
JoJo's at Indiana now.
Is he what?
Yeah. Yep.
Is he
He's on
playing?
the sparingly, mostly on special teams.
Huh. ND Higgs is in the chat. ND Higgs, good to see you, my friend. My buddy Ross is here. Okay, I hadn't followed JoJo. That's awesome. Good for him. Ashton Craig, like from was it Lawrenceville something in Indiana? I can't remember his high school, but small, rural. Am I remembering that correctly, Kyle?
That was before my time, but I know he's an in-state recruit, and I think he's closer to Cincinnati.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, like right on the
Indianapolis.
border. Yeah, Lawrenceburg, not Lawrenceville. Yeah, Lawrenceburg. You know, a team that is it's always good, but yeah, not like a Indianapolis Power or anything like that. And then who else did I have? Boubacar Traore, Boston College commit, wasn't very highly recruited, and then Teddy Rizak last year. So some good picks there. Favorite interview, Anthony Sacca, really just kind of one of these where like Sacca, I put in the article, like Sacca is just, you feel like you're talking to a peer and not a 17, 18-year-old kid. Runner-up, Jerome Bettis Jr., a lot of fun to interview as well. Past picks, Drew Pine in 2020. Rocco Spindler was a fun one in 2021 class. Billy Strouth, rarely got to interview with Billy Strouth, but he was fun. Sullivan Absher. I know you've seen Sullivan Absher in person. Just a big, fun personality with that act. And Bryce Young in the 2024 class. Some great picks. And then the one you've all been waiting for, the fan club selection. Okay, so I was the Joe Alt fan club. This doesn't get talked about as much anymore since he's not on the team any longer. But I called Joe Alt. It's like, this guy's gonna be a stud. He was better than I thought. But so I've been asked since, like, hey, who's kind of your Joe Alt of this class? So in past years, Drew Pine 2020. Joe Alt, of course. The Pine was kind of like my favorite recruit before the Alt. So this was kind of like I can't remember the word I'm looking for here, but where you go back in time and retroactively pick it. So Joe Alt 2020, Pine 2020, obviously Alt 21, Angeli 2022, Jeremiah Love. So it was kind of more under the radar guys, or not highly talked about. And then the past couple of years, I did go for some bigger names because they were just my favorite recruits in the class. Love in 2023, Lambert 2024. But for this year, went back a little bit more to my roots to a fringe 3 to 4 star guy, and it's Elijah Burris. I in my sources, Kyle, think that Burris is going to play as a true freshman. Like, he is going to contribute in 2025. Love Elijah Burris, very smart football player. Obviously, the son of Plexico Burris. Good hands, good route runner, solid speed. Just across the board, I think Elijah Burris can do it all. Kyle, thoughts on my last three? Maybe you give me your favorite interview from this class.
Can I ask you a question that I want you to answer completely honestly?
No, I can't promise anything.
Okay, well, I want you to. Let me see here if I can do this. Did you forget this guy was in the class when you were doing your superlatives?
Listen, there's other players that didn't get superlatives either. But where would you want me to pick Farimo?
Because when you were, the only reason I asked this is because when you were going through the superlatives, I also kind of forgot. Well, I'm not saying you did, but I forgot that Madden Farimo was part of the class. Because I'm starting to think, I was like, wait a sec, instant impact might be Madden Farimo actually.
It could be. There's a lot of young linebackers there he's going to have to compete with. Like, Flanagan might play more than Farimo. Like, I'm not putting him. So I'm not putting him for class MVP. I'm not putting him for best athlete. I'm not putting him for most underrated. I'm not putting him for boomer bust. I'm not putting him for most versatile. Instant impact could be, right there with Jadon Blair. Like, Jadon Blair, I really considered as well. Hidden gem. He's not a hidden gem. I never interviewed him, and he's not my fan club selection. So, like, just because you don't line up for a superlative doesn't mean anything. Like, notable, like Zachary didn't win one. I love Mark Zachary. So I think I even noted this in the article, Kyle, at the top. I wrote, this is an annual article that I published a couple days after signing day, and it is mainly for fun and should not be taken that seriously. So, and I also said, by the way, a player not listed in this article should not be seen as a positive or negative towards them. The story's just for fun. Like, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of me giving some thoughts. So that's why. That's the rundown.
Well, if I had to pick favorite interview, Matt and Framo would
There you
take home that award. I'm one of the few media members who Madden has been kind enough to allow me to interview him about his recruitment, and he is very insightful. Madden is a special kid. That's why I feel so strongly that he's going to be a great player for Notre Dame. So,
Okay.
I wanted to pass that along.
Who's your fan club guy?
I was looking at that. Let me stop sharing my screen because I have to go back to the commit list. I mean, I feel like I kind of owe it to myself to pick Ethan Long, because I have been I'm dying on the he's underrated hill. So I might have to go with him. I mean, to be honest, the guy that I kind of am also the hill that I'm also kind of dying on in this class, and I kind of did it in 2023. And I don't know if it's going to work out. I hope it does, is with the quarterback, with Kenny Minchie, because I think I've kind of told you a few times before, and I know I've told people when they ask me what I think about Blake Hebert, there's something about him, man. I just have a hunch that I think he could be a special player for Notre Dame. And, sometimes when I mean special player, I don't exactly mean Heisman Trophy candidate or,
It's better than people think, huh?
yeah, day 1 or day 2 NFL draft choice. With Hebert, I said this in my coverage of him, I just think he could be that Ian Book type of player where somehow he leaves Notre Dame and, maybe not everyone's, mostly impressed with him. And, they have their critiques, but he'll leave Notre Dame as one of the winningest quarterbacks and ends up becoming a 4th-round NFL draft pick. I just have that weird sense about Blake Hebert. I don't know.
Yeah. Can we just say real quick, let's just call a spade a spade. This one, I loved Ian Book, right? It was so much fun to follow. It was at the very tail end of the 4th round, and it was not a good draft pick. It just wasn't.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it was a good draft pick, but
the fact is the fact. Ian Book did go in the 4th round, but, he's an NFL backup, long term, Love Ian Book, but just calling a spade because you did mention that. I don't think I've ever said that before. All right, Kyle, wrapping up the show. So for folks just watching this, of course, if you're just tuning in, please hit the thumbs up on this video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. If you're looking for what's in the headline, how Indiana compares to the Irish roster, you're going to have to rewind. We talked about that at the beginning of the show, but I do want to wrap up, Kyle, talking about some 2026 Notre Dame recruiting, because you blink and they're up to 5 commitments, landing 2 earlier this month. So I feel like it's a really good start to the class with some high quality players and individuals. You got the quarterback you wanted in Noah Grubbs. You got the linebacker you really wanted in Thomas Davis Jr. Chasten Smith from, he plays his high school ball in Chattanooga right now, but originally from Knoxville. Will be interesting. I don't know what his, what his relationship is like with the Tennessee Volunteers, but, the Chasten Smith is one to me. It's going to be I could see other schools beating down his door. This was a little bit of a surprise commitment for me personally. I was hearing Clemson and Texas A&M were in better position for Notre Dame than he commits to the Irish. So this is one I could see other schools beating down his door, and we'll see where that one goes. But Chasten Smith, what an elite looking prospect on film. His junior tape, very limited because of his high ankle sprain. But Chasten Smith looked tremendous on film. Sullivan Garvin, really solid interior offensive lineman who looks to have some high upside. And then Dylan Faison, 5'11", 170 pounds, the younger brother of Jordan Faison, looks really good on film, a playmaker, punt returns, getting the ball in space. Dylan Faison looks great. So I think it's a really solid start to the 2026 recruiting class for the Irish. What do you think, Kyle?
Well, December 24th, there could be another one. And I predicted back in September that Ben Nichols from
Oh,
Davison, Michigan High School would eventually end up on the Notre Dame
wait,
commit
wait.
list.
Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling.
You're not on there, brother.
Oh
You
shit, am
didn't
I
pick
not?
her. No,
What?
you and I always found this odd that you never predicted him either.
Well, clearly I thought I did.
So this is just me, and so I'm keeping my pick for Ben Nichols to end up on Notre Dame's commit
I
list.
I thought I did. That's funny.
The 4 finalists are none of the teams well, 2 of these teams on this list. Wisconsin's or actually 4. Wisconsin's a finalist, Penn State's a finalist, and Tennessee's a finalist. But the RPM, because I have Nichols predicted to Notre Dame, is at 82%. And I'm going to say on Christmas Eve that Notre Dame lands another commit. I'm putting my stake in the ground. That's my prediction.
Does that be?
There's some
Yeah.
other schools making it pretty difficult on him, but I think that was a nice reminder because I don't think a lot of people remember that Ben Nichols set a commitment date last week. So
Yeah. Good call. I forgot too. That would have been a topic on the show. So yeah, Ben Nichols, another interior offensive lineman commitment for Notre Dame, and that would give them 6. I don't know how I love, how I think about working on Christmas Eve, but that's okay. We'll be all right. At least it's like easy articles to write. We don't have to think outside the box. See, I think it's a really nice start to the class for the Irish, and like you look up and down, it's like, all right, like I see these guys sticking with Notre Dame, whereas in the past it's like, oh man, like CJ May gonna stick, like Deuce Knight's gonna be a battle to the end. This year, I think it's a little bit more like, I locked in. That's at least my opinion. That could change. Goshen Gamer, appreciate the $2 super chat, my friend. Appreciate you supporting the show. Good to see you. So, any other thoughts on the 26 class of Kyle before we head out?
I do just want to mention one thing because I don't know if you've actually realized this because you have, as part of like kind of our assignments and duties at Blue and Gold, like I've been much more tasked with sorting through the 26 class, and like every week in the magazine we do like a rundown of all the guys on the target list, and we'll remove guys if they leave Notre Dame out of their top schools or things like that. But basically, I don't know if you realize, but their 26 target board is pretty darn narrow at this point. So I think that there's either going to be some guys they feel really, really good about that they're going to close on, or even if there are, I think come wintertime during that evaluation period, they're going to offer a whole bunch of new guys.
Yeah.
So that's something to monitor. Here's another thing that we probably should have talked about, but they offered 2 defensive linemen from North Carolina last week. And so that's just one example of them continually expanding their boards. So we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks when it comes to 2026 recruiting.
Yeah, Andy Higgs said, any thoughts on transfer recruiting? This is something that Notre Dame clearly, like, Kyle, it's on my list sometime soon to go through the research. I want to get to this in the next 48 hours, is look at how many players since let's say November 1 or December 1 or since the portal opened, how many players has left a team, and are any 0 like Notre Dame is 0. So Notre Dame is very much like, Kyle, you've seen a little bit of coaches moving, right? It's not the craziness yet, but Notre Dame hasn't had a coach leave yet, haven't had a transfer out this, look, you had Mickey, Aiden go by, or Tyson Ford, but that was months ago, right? In the past couple weeks, no coaches leave, no transfers out, and then no transfers in. There is just a huge focus on, hey, we are all on the playoff run. So in terms of guys coming in, do they have people lined up? Very, very possible. But the focus is on the playoffs. That is just it. End of discussion. Nothing else to add. So no one's really reporting on it. It's being kept quiet behind closed doors. And after the playoff run, you'll see what Notre Dame's got going on the portal, and we'll see who leaves the team. So I love this, by the way. I think this is the way it should be, and I'm glad that this is look, if I'm like I'm not going to say any names, but if I'm a player and it's like, oh man, they're bringing a player at my position, it's like, and I play for the Irish right now, like, could that rattle? Like, you just don't want anything to rattle. You want it to be all about the team glory, as Reem talks about. So that's my spiel. That's my spiel there. So, Kyle, just hit an hour. I got things to do, places to be. Got to run some errands. So we are going to end the show there. Really appreciate everyone who tuned in to watch. If you're just joining us, rewind, watch from the beginning. Kyle did a really good job breaking down Indiana's roster from a recruiting ranking standpoint and how it compares to Notre Dame. I thought that was fascinating. So, folks, please hit that thumbs up on the video if you have not done so yet. And as always, we will catch you next time.